Welcome back to my channel. In this video lecture, we will cover our new chapter of class 10th social science, that is print culture and modern world. We find evidences of print everywhere around us in books, paints of famous paintings and etc. What will we learn in this chapter? In this chapter, we will look at the development of print from its beginning in East Asia to its expansion in Europe and in India. We will understand the impact of spread of technology, and then the first topic is the first printed books. The earliest kind of print technology was developed in China, Japan and Korea. This was a system of hand printing. Prints in China from AD 594 onwards, books in China were printed by rubbing paper, also invented there, against the ink surface of wood blocks. As both sides of thin, porous sheet could not be printed, the traditional Chinese accordion book was folded and stitched on the side. It was then copied by skilled craftsmen through calligraphy. The imperial state in China, major producer of printed material. Second, China possessed a huge bureaucratic system. Third, textbooks for this examination were printed in vast numbers. Diversified uses of prints. By the 17th century, as urban cultures bloomed in China, the uses of print diversified. Print was no longer used just by scholar officials. Merchants used prints in their everyday life as they collected trade information. Preferences of new readers, fictional narratives, poetry, and etc. Then diversified uses of prints. Rich women begins to read, and many women begin publishing their poetry and plays. Wives of scholars, officials published their works, and courtesans wrote about their lives. The new reading culture accompanied by a new technology. Western printing techniques and mechanical presses were imported in late 19th century in China. Shanghai became the hub of the new print culture. From hand printing, there was a gradual shift to the mechanical printing. Then print in Japan. Buddhist missionaries from China introduced hand printing technology into Japan around AD 768-770. The oldest Japanese book printed in AD 868 is the Buddhist Diamond Sutra, containing 6 sheets of text and woodcut illustrations. Pictures were printed on textiles, playing cards, and paper money. In medieval Japan, books were cheap and abundant. In the late 18th century, in the flourishing urban circles at Edo, Tokyo, illustrated collections of paintings depicted on elegant urban culture involving artists, courtesans, and tea house gatherings. Libraries and bookstores had hand-printed materials, books on women, musical instruments, and etc. A morning scene, Yukio, print by Shumana Kubo, late 18th century. A man looks out of the window at the snowfall while women prepare tea and perform other household duties. Print comes to Europe. In 11th century, Chinese paper reached Europe through the same route. Paper made possible the production of manuscripts. In 1295, Marco Polo, a great explorer, returned to Italy after exploration in China. Marco Polo brought the knowledge of woodblock painting. Luxury edition was still handwritten on very expensive vellum, meant for rich class. Merchants and students in the university town bought the cheaper printed copies. As the demand for books increased, booksellers all over Europe began exporting books to many different countries. Books were held at different places. Production of handwritten manuscripts was organized. Scribes or skilled handwriters were now employed by booksellers as well. More than 50 scribes often worked for one bookseller. Why does production of handwritten manuscripts failed? Copying was an expensive, laborious and time-consuming business. Manuscripts were fragile, awkward to handle, and could not be carried around or read easily. With the growing demand for books, woodblock printing gradually became more and more popular. By the early 15th century, woodblocks were being used in Europe to print textiles, playing cards, and religious pictures, etc. There was clearly a great need for even quicker and cheaper reproductions of text. The breakthrough occurred at Strasbourg, Germany, where Johann Gutenberg developed the first time printing press in the 1430s. Then Gutenberg and printing press. Gutenberg was the son of merchant and grew up on a large agricultural estate. From his childhood, he had seen wine and olive presses, so he learned the act of polishing stones, became a master goldsmith, and also acquired the expertise to create lead molds used for making trinkets. The olive press provided the models for the printing press, and molds were used for casting the metal types for the letters of the alphabet. Platen. In letterpress painting, platen is a board which is pressed onto the back of the paper to get the impression from the type. At one time it is used to be a wooden board, later it is made up of steel. Compositor, the person who composes the text for printing. Gallery, metal frame in which types are laid and text composed. A printer's workshop, 16th century. This picture depicts what a printer's shop looked like in the 16th century. All the activities are going on under one roof. In the foreground on the right, compositors are at work, while on the left, galleries are being prepared and ink is being applied on the metal types. By 1448, Gutenberg perfected the system. The first book he printed was the Bible. About 180 copies were printed and it took 3 years to produce them. The new technology did not entirely displace the existing handmade books. Printed books at first closely resembled the written manuscripts in appearance and layout. The metal letters imitated ornamental handwritten styles. Borders were illuminated by hand with foliage, and other patterns and illustrations were painted. In the books printed for the rich, space for decoration was kept blank on the printed page. Each purchaser can choose the design and decide on the painting school that would do the illustration. In the 100 years between 1450 and 1550, printing presses were set up in most countries of Europe. Printers from Germany traveled to other countries seeking work and helping start new presses. As the number of printing presses grew, book production boomed. The second half of the 15th century saw 12 million copies of printed books flooding the markets in Europe. This shift from hand printing to mechanical printing led to print revolution. The print revolution and its impact, a new reading public. Printing press led to a new reading public. Printing reduced the cost of books, the time and the labor required to produce each book came down. Multiple copies could be produced with greater ease. In situation before age of print, access to books, reading was restricted to elites. Common people lived in a world of oral culture. They heard sacred texts read out, ballads recited, and folk tales narrated. Knowledge was transferred orally. Before the age of print, books were not expensive, but they could not be produced in sufficient number. Now, books could reach out to the wider section of people. Now, reading public came into being, but the transition was not so simple. Books could be read only by literate. The rates of literacy in most European countries was very low till the 20th century. Wider reach of the printed books, printers began publishing popular ballads and folk tales, and these were sung and recited at their gatherings. Ballads are the historical account of folk tales in verses usually sung or recited. Taverns are places where people gather to drink alcohols, to be served food, and to meet friends and exchange news. Oral culture thus entered print, and printed material was orally transmitted. The line that separated the oral and reading cultures became blurred. Then religious debates and fear of prints created the possibility of wide circulation of idea and introduced a new world of debates and discussion. Even those who disagreed with established authorities could now print and circulate their ideas. Not everyone welcomed the printed books. It was feared by the religious authorities and monarchs, as well as many writers and artists, that if there was no control over what was printed and read, then rebellious and irreligious thought might spread. If that happened, the authority of valuable literature would be destroyed. Implications of print culture in religious sphere of life in early modern Europe. In 1517, the religious reformer Martin Luther wrote 90-50 theses criticizing many of the practices and rituals of the Roman Catholic Church. A printed copy of this was posted on a church door in Wittenberg. It challenged the church to debate its ideas. Luther's writings were immediately reproduced in vast numbers and read widely. This led to a division within the church and to the beginning of the Protestant Reformation. Luther's translations of New Testament sold 5,000 copies within a few weeks, and the second edition appeared within 3 months. Deeply grateful to print, Luther said, "Printing is the ultimate gift of God and the greatest one." Print brought about a new intellectual atmosphere and helped spread the new ideas that led to Reformation. Protestant Reformation, a 16th century movement to reform the Catholic Church dominated by Rome. Martin Luther was one of the main Protestant reformers. Several traditions of anti-Catholic Christianity developed out of the movement. J.V. Skelly, El Imprimeria. This is one of the many images produced in the early modern Europe celebrating the coming of print. You can see the printing press descending from heaven carried by goddesses. On two sides of goddesses blessing the machines are Minerva, the goddess of wisdom, and Mercury, the messenger god, also symbolizing reason. The women in the foreground are holding plaques with the portraits of 6 planner printers of different countries. In the middle ground at the left is the portrait of Gutenberg. Print and dissent. Print in popular religious literature stimulated many individual interpretation of faith. In question, a former Roman Catholic code for identifying and punishing heretics. Heretical beliefs which do not follow the accepted teachings of the Church. In medieval times, heresy was seen as the threat to the right of the Church to decide on what should be believed and what should not. Heretical beliefs were severely punished. Index of prohibited books from 1558. The reading mania. 17th and 18th century Europe, literacy rate went up. Churches set up schools in villages. By the end of 18th century, literacy rates were as high as 60 to 80%. There was a virtual reading mania. Then Almanac, it is an annual publication giving astronomical data information about the movements of the sun and the moon, timings of full tides and eclipse, and much else that was important in the everyday life of a people. In England, penny chapbooks were carried by petty peddlers known as chapmen. In France were the dash, which were low-priced small books printed on poor quality paper and bound in cheap blue covers. Then there were the romance printed on 4 to 6 pages. Books were of various size and interest. Chapbook, a term used to describe pocket-sized books that are sold by traveling peddlers called chapmen. These became popular from the time of the 16th century print revolution. The periodical press in early 18th century combining information about current affairs with entertainment. Ideas about science, reason and rationality found their way into popular literature. The ideas of scientists and philosophers now became more accessible to common people. Scientists like Isaac Newton began to publish their discoveries. Now they could influence a much wider circle of scientifically minded readers. The writings of thinkers such as Thomas Paine, Voltaire, and Jean-Jacques Rousseau were also widely printed and read. Tremble, therefore, tyrants of the world. Louis Sebastian Mercier, a novelist in 18th century France, declared, "The printing press is the most powerful engine of progress, and public opinion is the force that will sweep despotism away." In Mercier's novels, the heroes are transformed by acts of reading. Tremble, therefore, tyrants of the world, tremble before the virtual writer. Print popularized the ideas of Enlightenment thinkers, critical commentary on tradition, superstition, and despotism. They argued for the rule of reason rather than custom. They attacked the sacred authority of the church and despotic power of the state. The writings of Voltaire and Rousseau were read widely. Print created a new culture of dialogues and debate. All values, norms, and institutions were re-evaluated by a public that had become aware of the power of the reason. Literature that mocked the royalty and criticized their morality. Cartoons and caricatures suggested the monarchy remained absorbed only in sensual pleasure. Common people suffered immense hardship. This literature created hostile sentiments against the monarchy. If they read the ideas of Voltaire and Rousseau, they were also exposed to monarchical and church propaganda. They were not influenced directly by everything they read or saw. They accepted some ideas and rejected others. They interpreted things their own way. Print did not directly shape their minds, but it did open up the possibility of thinking differently. So thank you for watching my video. Hope you liked it and understood it well. Don't forget to like, share and comment my videos, and don't forget to subscribe my channel. This was the part 1 of print culture chapter. Part 2 will be uploaded soon. Till then, bye bye. Thank you.